Welcome, and thank you for joining for another whiskey review. Today, we're going to take a look at the 2023 Springbank 18. Dustin. Springbank 18, one of our favorites. Annual releases, comes in as it does every year at 46% ABV. What is the cask maturation this time, my friend?
Seemingly getting better every time, it feels like.
I know. They've been on a hot streak lately with these 18s.
They've been killing it. It makes me want to go buy some of the 21s, but I saw the price. Anyway, this one here, 65 bourbon, I believe 65 sherry, 20% bourbon, and I believe 15% is rum. So a little fancier blend than usual. They usually kind of stick with the bourbon sherry, but they branch out occasionally.
Yeah, usually bourbon, sherry go well together. Every once in a while, they'll throw some rum casks or some port pipes or something fancy in some of these Springbanks.
Chardonnay or something crazy, Bordeaux.
Usually it's when one of the sherry casks probably disappointed a little bit, so they want to jazz it up. Usually that's the case, but usually it's a good end result.
I think Springbank just like throws stuff out there and like, hey, this cask's pretty good. What do you want to do with it?
All right, so right away, you are getting a little bit sharper of a sweetness note, probably from that rum cask.
I got a hint of a sour funk initially on it that definitely to me kind of seems, that could be rum.
Could be rum, right.
The oak I kind of tend to think is those sherry casks. Springbank kind of varies from occasionally getting a little aggressive, overly woody, meaty with their sherry, and then other times more stately oak, which I think this is kind of veering that direction.
Yes, it smells older than 18.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, they've been doing a really good sherry cask lately on these 18s. The 15s have gotten a little darker, a little more oaky than I prefer.
I don't see the 18s are not that level of oak, but it's an increase in the level of oak note from what the 18s used to be for sure.
Oh, I mean, you go back to I've got a 2014 18. I had one open. I don't think I have one open right now. Anyway, it was very light and very much left me wondering why would I pay the premium for the 18 over the 10 because it was just too similar. And boy, have they taken things a different direction.
Yeah, these are getting every year now. They've been really impressive.
Yeah.
I'm still getting the sugary cookie note, not necessarily the batter note, but like the sugar sweetness from that cookie.
Getting a little bit of grapiness too coming in here. That's usually a good sign.
Just a wisp of smoke. This has never been a real smoky whiskey for me, period. But
no.
It's a nice little compliment.
They've had one or two batches maybe where you got a little more peat than others, but generally speaking, this is just kind of middle of the road Springbank in terms of cask maturation, where it's not super sherry, it's not super light, but it always lets the Springbank malt come through, whereas the 21, 25, the Springbank kind of starts fading into the distance as it gets older and more stately.
Yeah, this is about the best of the dirty young Springbank as far as the age statements go.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, I mean, it's a little sweeter than most of the releases, I'll say that. But aside from that, I mean, again, it's pleasant. I don't get as much as the vinegar chips as I would normally get, but they're still there in the background.
Yeah, this is really, for me, the cookies, a little bit of sour, which I'm thinking is kind of more rum forward than traditional Springbank sour. Nice, stately, older oak note here with kind of, almost to me like it's like these are old sherry casks that they found. But like the bourbon cask, the rum cask, they're probably right at that 18.
I like when you said purple. I'm right there with you on that one too.
Oh man, this is classic Springbank 18. Turned up the dial just a hint. So it's going to give you that sugar cookie. You've got a nice sherry up front. You've got a nice just overall sweetness with like some dark berries, a little bit of figs, maybe a little. You might even get like hints of some apple, like a green apple in there. Well, chewy, a little bit of smoke now coming on in the end. You get a little bit of like a chocolate chew kind of happening here just slightly. Really intense up front. It's really strong when you swallow. It fades off. It's not super oily or waxy on the finish. When the smoke rolls in, it's a little thinner. Whew. But man, that's it on all the stuff I like in Springbank.
Yeah, it's sharp. It's definitely one of the sweeter Springbanks. Really sharp sweetness. I agree with a lot of the tasting notes you had. What I'll add to that is berries.
Oh yeah, good call.
I mean, I get a little bit of sharp blueberry, a little sugared sharp blueberry, and a little bit of raspberry too. Both kind of initially when I take it on the palate, but yeah, at first swallow, it's pretty classic Springbank. I would say a little over sherried, over rummed, or over non-bourbon cask maturated to some degree as compared to the other ones. But this is more of a dessert of 18-year-old as compared to some of the other ones. Some of them have been more, juicy fruit or more bourbon influence. But this one's very, of all of them, a dessert one. And I think that's because of the rum cask. But there's also something that's slightly vegetal, too, on the end of it, too. I think that's probably from rum cask as well.
Yeah, it's a stately whiskey. It's really drinking well for 18 years. It's hitting hard. It's got more flavor, more punch than a lot of the Springbank 18s that you tend to get, where some of them kind of come in a little light. That's my one complaint I always have on these older Springbanks, especially when we're looking at $300 now for these here in the U.S., Mike.
Well, 46% ABV, you're limited as far as what type of punch you can deliver at that ABV.
Absolutely, but every now and then you'll get one that 46er that really hits well. These always seem a little lighter than I'd like.
This is a sharp one though. It's got a sharp little sweet tart bite initially. When I remember when I first took the first sip.
Yeah, I mean, if you like Springbank, you're gonna love this bottle. I mean, just straight up, this is Springbank with a good cask, good emphasis, good punch. Wish the price was a little lower, but man. Like, this is so good, I really wanted to get a second bottle of this, and I couldn't justify it at $300.
It's a lot.
But I really wanted it.
No different than Macallan 18. This one's 30% higher.
Yeah, but I'd actually buy this one again.
A little bit of water. I would say brought out more of the fruit sweetness. You mentioned apple before, and I know I said berries, but there is a bouquet of fruits here in general.
I've never said apple on a Springbank before, but there was something in there. Like, I just got this little hint of apple, which is just unusual.
Golden Delicious or something like that.
Yeah, it's not just like your traditional red kind of dull. It's a little bit of green apple.
It's sharp. It's ripe. It's ready to eat, but firm. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'd say the sugar notes are kicking up here, like that. It's like the sugar, they put on a sugar cookie, to really kind of give you that emphasis that no, that's a sugar cookie. I swear.
Yeah, the pastry note's a little bit easier to pick up too. It's more bready than cookie, I would say.
Yeah.
But it's more of a bready dough. But finally, I'm kind of getting it where it was overwhelmed by the sweetness initially.
There's always this very unique. It's like woody, but kind of like wet wood kind of note that Springbank picks up. That I'm getting here.
When I say damp or vegetal note, I'm kind of kicking around that same note. Some type of driftwood or something.
And it's it's a sweet note. Like it's a sweet wet oak, and I get it on Springbank all the time, and it's always one of those notes where I'm like, it's almost like it didn't take on enough oomph from the cask, but it left that wooden note. It's hard to explain, but again, it's just classic Springbank coming through all throughout this.
Yeah, it's sashaying more into what a regular 18 is. It was a bit of an overcoat neat. I mean, this is like we neck poured this, so when you break this down a little bit, it's got some decent oxidation.
Yeah, of course, we're down to the 700 world now, so they go down a lot faster now. They've got these more dainty shoulders on these 700s.
This is a big sweet punch still. Even with all this water. It makes things more accessible, but man, that overcoat of dark sherry is still there. It's just amplified by that rum cask.
Ooh. So now, citrus and tropical fruits are really coming out with the water. Got really citrusy. Maybe not my favorite thing, to be honest with you. I kind of prefer it a little more on the darker fruit side, but it didn't lose power, didn't lose flavor, didn't lose oomph, so it took the water real well. But definitely giving you more of that classic Springbank 10 note where you're getting more of the ex-bourbon notes coming through here, more of the levels of acidity, citrus, maybe a little bit of pineapple kind of note to kind of give you direction with that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It did get a little more acidic, with water for sure, and that is generally what I get out of bourbon cask, ex-bourbon cask maturation. I agree. I mean, it's a sharp lemon.
Yeah, but
as far as the sting, the tang of it. Where before it was kind of like a sweet tart, not to interrupt you, but before it's kind of a sweet tart sharpness when I first swallowed it, where this was replaced by a citrus sharpness as I swallowed.
Yeah. I mean, overall, what I'm really kind of picking up on this, Mike, is just good, strong sweetness up front. Sachets into this really nice kind of oaky, woody, really nice, stately, older whiskey note in the middle. And then as you swallow, you start picking up the nice little bit of smoke, a little bit of the peat comes through. Really a complete Springbank from start to finish, hits you in all the different places in your mouth, gives you the full spectrum of a whiskey, which I think is really what makes this stand out and is exceptional.
It really has transitioned quite a bit with water. on the nose and on the palate. I think it really uncovered the Springbank notes. I mean, it really got funky. And I know the rum cast added some funk to it, but that's really subsided. Now you're getting a little bit of coastal. Now you're getting a little bit of that seashore remembrance of salt. And dare spray just a little bit of that sharpness of like an old 10, bourbon cask, old Springbank 10. Yeah, the citrus sharpness reminds me of the 10 a lot, actually.
Yeah, like I said, my fear every time I get these older Springbanks is always that sometimes you may not get a little, just lacking a little oomph. This one comes in on the high end of oomph for Springbank. Very technical whiskey judging statement there, right?
Yeah, a little oomph. But I think the bourbon cask in this mix was a little bit sharp. I think that was the reason for the rum cask, just to kind of cover that up just a little bit. Now, I like that whiskey can change, and I like that, there's two different versions of it, with and without water. But I'll tell you what, I definitely prefer it without water, smell and taste. I'd rather just go with that funkier note because I think it was a bit of a cleanup job, but that's just me. Thoughts?
I never know why Springbank uses rum occasionally. I've never been a fan of Springbank and rum, with the exception of they've used a few dark rums in the past, which I do think work well. This is probably not a dark rum, is my guess. Here, again, it does some weird stuff, but overall, I absolutely love this. I think it's one of the most flavor-packed Springbank 18s. It has the oomph. It has full mouth coating. It hits you in all the right spots. I love it, Mike, and if you don't mind, I'm going to jump ahead on the score and go.
Yeah, give it to me.
Give it a 90. Really like this one. I don't know that they're hiding casks. I think the end result was just a hodgepodge of different flavor notes, which I think together all work well. I don't think any of these would have been great single casks by themselves, but that's not a negative when they blend well together.
No, in any whiskey that changed, that's a sign of a solid whiskey, as we've said many times on this channel. I'm slightly lower than you, 88, 89. I enjoy it. I just think with water, the flavors that came up really weren't for me. I've enjoyed other Springbank 18s a little bit better. Usually this whiskey's around a 90. Today it's an 89. 88, 89.
Well, come on, give it a score, Mike.
88. I'm a little more down on it with water.
I would have scored it lower if I was scoring with the water, but the pre-water, I think, is just excellent whiskey.
It was a good one, and it did change.
I would never put water in this personally, but
it's a strong 88.
It held up to the water, which I give it credit for.
Hey, it changed. It shows another side of the whiskey, which if you just said beforehand, it's going to change, but you're going to be a little disappointed with the change, but it's still something you want to experience. Yeah, absolutely. I still want to see what
you got options.
Got options. If not, now you want to keep it as a good, fairly strong sherry bomb, a Springbank 18 with a little bit of wisp of smoke. Don't put water in it. Nice little 88. Little Balvenie 15-year-old single barrel.
Fair enough.
Anyway, those are our thoughts on this particular 2023 release of the Springbank 18. We'll continue to bring these guys as long as we can get them and afford them. But those are our thoughts on this particular one. Dustin, until next time, we'll wish the folks
happy funky drinking.
We'll see you then.